the most mysterious curses of the Egyptian pyramids. In December 1993, the tomb of Pharaoh Pateti and his wife was opened in Giza. The age of the tomb was about 4,600 years. Archaeologists were attracted by the inscription. The great goddess Hathor would twice punish anyone who dares to desecrate this grave. These words turned out to be not an empty threat. The head of the excavations, Saki Hawass, suddenly suffered a heart attack, which almost led to death. An earthquake destroyed the house of his fellow archaeologist, who was at an excavation site. Ultimately, the train carrying the recovered treasures derailed and most of the artifacts were completely destroyed. 91 years ago, a British expedition led by scientist Howard Carter made one of the main archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. They found the stone sarcophagus of Tutankhamun. Subsequent events, which are commonly called the Curse of Tutankhamun, one way or another, led to the death of 13 people from Carter's squad. RGE recalls cases of mysterious deaths related to the secrets of the Egyptian pyramids. The Curse of Tutankhamun. In the winter of 1923, Carter and his sponsor Lord Carnarvon, in the presence of several invitees, opened the tomb of Tutankhamun. In addition to the sarcophagus, there were many different relics, jewelry and one inconspicuous clay tablet with the words, "Death will strike with its wings everyone who disturbs the peace of the pharaoh." The discovery and opening of the tomb was a triumph not only for the successful archaeologist, but also for the enterprising Lord Banker. 6 weeks later, Carnarvon, 57, suddenly fell ill. The first version was that he was bitten by a mosquito. Then it turned out that he cut himself while shaving. The official cause of the Lord's death remains unknown. Over the course of the year, 5 more people died quite suddenly. They all visited the tomb of Tutankhamun. Among them were the radiologist Weed, who x-rayed the pharaoh's mummy right in the tomb, the English professor of literature Waffler, conservation specialist Arthur Mays, and Carter's secretary Richard Bethel, who were present at the opening of the sarcophagus. This is how the legend of the Curse of the Pharaoh was born. An animated mummy. On one hot evening in the 30s of the last century, the Hall of Mummies of the National Cairo Museum was, as usual, full of visitors. Suddenly, from the vertically standing sarcophagus of the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, a chilling grinding sound, similar to a scream, was heard, and those present were presented with a terrible picture. The mummy came to life. The bandages holding the body burst. The hands hit the glass lid of the sarcophagus hard and broke it, as if in an attempt to get out from the crypt. Ramses' mouth, distorted by a silent scream, grinned at the visitors, many of whom fell unconscious or, fleeing, jumped out of the windows in panic. The mummy Francie, in an unnatural position, and putting it back in place was not an easy task. It was as if the pharaoh did not want to return to captivity. Subsequently, archaeologists and chemists will say that the specific composition of the mummifying bomb is to blame, namely its reaction to high temperature. But the people who saw the revived pharaoh that day were unlikely to believe them. Femme fatale. The tomb with the mummy of the great priestess of the temple of Pharaoh Amenemhat II Amenrafram, the city of Great Thebes, was found in 1902 during excavations of the pyramid by 5 local residents. The sarcophagus with the mummy was bought from them by 4 English archaeologists. The Arabs started a quarrel among themselves over the money they received, which ended in a bloody fight. They all died from the stab wounds they received. These were the first 5 victims of the Egyptian priestess. An Egyptologist transporting the mummy to Cairo injured his finger on the sarcophagus, as a result of which he received blood poisoning. Surgeons had to urgently amputate his arm to save his life. The scientist's assistant, who was involved in sending the mummy to London, soon shot himself. The third member of the archaeological expedition died of fever. The fourth was crushed in the street by a dray driver's cart. The photographer, who was commissioned by the Egyptian authorities to take photographs of the priestess, went crazy. His imagination painted him terrible pictures. The priestess came to life and thirsted for the blood of the people who awakened her. The second photographer died 8 days after filming from sunstroke. Finally, the fatal priestess of Amun-Ra was transported to London, where she found peace in the British Museum. Stripe black, stripe black. In the 60s of the 19th century, a wealthy Englishman, Douglas Murray, who was collecting a collection of unique items, bodily taken by tomb robbers from the sarcophagus of an Egyptian mummy. A couple of days after the acquisition, during a hunt, a gun exploded in Murray's hands, and the collector lost his hand. A little later, the lid of the sarcophagus was lent by him to a private exhibition in another city and sent by ship. During those few days while she was in the hold, the unfortunate ship burned twice. The biggest misfortune befell Murray's acquaintance, who helped him acquire part of the sarcophagus. She received news of the death of her husband, son and 2 sisters during a flood in India. The lady immediately went to the British colony for the funeral of her relatives, but the ship hit a reef and sank near the Cape of Good Hope. Neither yourself nor people. For of the most mysterious curses of the Egyptian pyramids, in December 1993, the tomb of Pharaoh Pateti and his wife was opened in Giza. The age of the tomb was about 4,600 years. Archaeologists were attracted by the inscription. The great goddess Hathor would twice punish anyone who dares to desecrate this grave. These words turned out to be not an empty threat. The head of the excavations, Saki Hawass, suddenly suffered a heart attack, which almost led to death. An earthquake destroyed the house of his fellow archaeologist, who was at an excavation site. Ultimately,